Hello everyone. We're going to discuss chapter 14. First of all, if you haven't watched chapter 6 video, you need to go ahead and do so. It has a lot more information than chapter 14. Just a reminder that observations, you should start having your time set up by now. Observation reports are due in a few weeks. We'll have already gone over the observation, what you need in an observation last week. You should have 3 hours of special education observations and 3 hours of regular education observations. The regular ed observations would have special education students in them, while of course the special ed observations would only have special education students in them. Make sure and go through and use the template. If you have any questions at all, make sure you ask before you get started on your observations, because you must have teacher signatures for every teacher you observe, not just a main teacher, not just a principal. You need to have signature pages from the actual teachers that you observe, and all the teachers that you observe you should have signature pages for. Make sure you have notes, structured observation. Basically look over the template, okay? If you have more questions, schedule an appointment for me or with me, and we'll talk about it. Reminder, you have one discussion board this week, chapter 6, classroom discussions for we'll do the IEP for EBD on Thursday. Reminder that the week of the 8th, I will be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I will be back for Thursday, so we will not meet Tuesday of that week. We will meet Thursday, same time, 7:30. You'll have chapter 6 and 14 quizzes. You'll have strategies for EBD and also strategies for the ECSE classroom. Thursday night, we'll look at the IEP. Make sure and watch the YouTube video for Billy as you go through. So let's see here. Kind of getting ahead of myself here. Have the quiz, strategies for ECSE. Let's go through the PowerPoint, which is what I was starting to do before I checked off my list there. So one of the first things is watch the YouTube video, and so go ahead and stop this this YouTube video and go to the video that's on your PowerPoint on Billy, and go ahead and pause it right now into the ECSE YouTube video. All right. Chapter objectives. This chapter, you will learn how to explain why early intervention is so critical for young children with disabilities. You'll identify key individualized family service plans, or IFSPs, and also IEPs. So we'll go through that. You'll need to make sure and remember that. Hint, hint, for the test coming up, and the difference between an IFSP and an IEP. List and describe 5 purposes of assessment in that early childhood special education. You'll describe how a play activity or an everyday routine can become a specially designed learning opportunity for a preschooler with disabilities. You'll list and briefly describe service delivery options for young children and identify advantages and disadvantages of each type. So let's go ahead and get into this here. And let's see here. The importance of early intervention. The earlier interventions begin, the better. And early intervention, when we're talking about early childhood special education, is a comprehensive system of therapies, educational, nutritional, child care, and family supports. Look at the items in red. You'll want to look at those a little bit closer and get more information on those. All designed to reduce the effects of disabilities or prevent the occurrence of learning and developmental problems later in life for children presumed to be at risk. In the ECSE program, you won't necessarily give them an autism diagnosis or a learning disability diagnosis or an ID diagnosis for that matter. What you will do is you will say that they're at risk, and you will work with them on what they need to be worked on, hoping again that you can correct those problems before they get into kindergarten, where you might then at that point work with them. Does early intervention work? You have four different research types that went through. You have the Skills and Die, the Milwaukee Project, the Abecedarian Project, the Infant Health and Development Program. This research evidence shows comprehensive and experientially based early intervention enhances the development of young children who already exhibit delays and helps children at risk of developmental delays by preventing those delays to entirely or minimizing their magnitude. So you're talking about a young child with a developmental delay is what the term used for students that you think might be at risk of special education. Outcomes for early intervention for IDEA of 2004. Okay, let me go ahead and escape here real quick. I need to do... enhanced development of infants and toddlers with disabilities. So you want to help their development continue by working with them and working with their parents and anybody else involved with that student to help enhance that. Reduce the educational cost to society. If you can help the toddlers get over the reason they're at risk, then you're going to reduce the cost of the school district by not having that student be in special education and needing that extra support. So you're going to assist that child and help them along the way before they get into school, so that hopefully by the time they get into kindergarten, first grade, they have now caught up with their peers and can do the same things that their typical peers age level, development level would do. Maximize potential for individuals with disabilities to live independently in society. So again, you are working with those individuals to help them learn those independent living skills, all of those type of skills to help them along the way. Next one here, outcomes again, it continues. Enhanced capacity of families to meet the needs of their preschooler. Parents and family may be the most important. You're going to do the IFSP is just as much for the family as it is for the student. The family is getting trained, is getting worked with to enhance how they can then work with their child to help them at the home scenario. So it also enhances the capacity of state and local agencies of infants and toddlers. About 329,000 were served nationally. Sorry, my phone's going off here. Also, early interventions, PL 99-457 mandated preschool services for children ages 3 to 5 years. So that's before they start school. Provided a voluntary incentive grant program for early intervention services to infants and toddlers, so schools can get grant money to help this situation go on and be well received. IDEA mandates early intervention services for any child under 3 years of age who has developmental delays or a high probability of developmental delays. So again, they don't need to have a diagnosis. That's not what early childhood special education does. As long as they suspect a reason to think that they are at risk or developmentally delayed, then they can work with that student. And it's mandated they work with that student. States that receive IDEA funds for early intervention must serve all infants and toddlers with developmental delays or established risks. States may also serve infants and toddlers who are identified as a biological or environmental risk. So there's several different scenarios that we can work with students before they get into school to help them be where they need to be and hopefully shrink that gap before they get into school. Developmental delays, significant delays, or atypical patterns of development. Establish risk conditions, diagnose physical or medical conditions, biological risk conditions like pediatric histories or current biological conditions, and also environmental risk conditions, extreme poverty, parental substance abuse, homelessness, abuse or neglect, a parental intellectual impairment associated with a higher probability of developmental delay. So there's a lot of things that could be worked with. I've marked these out, but to give you a chance to kind of get some ideas, why is it so difficult to measure the impact of early intervention? I want you to think about that slide as you watch that slide and see what it is that I'm going to go ahead and take that. I had it skipped, but go ahead and look at it and see, and then look at the next slide to see what your answer is. So see whether you're right or wrong. An IFSP is a plan that addresses the needs of the child and family and is developed by a multidisciplinary team. An IFSP defines the family as being the recipient of early intervention service. So it's not the child. When you're talking about an IEP, it's an individualized educational program or plan, and that's what that IEP is for. But when you're talking about an IFSP, that family is even part of that name. That is the recipient of those services along with the student. It's a whole family. The IFSP must be evaluated once a year and reviewed at 6-month interviews. So here's one of the differences that I asked you to look at. Okay, must be evaluated once a year, but it must be reviewed every 6 months. Okay, where an IEP is evaluated every 3 years and then looked at annually. Okay. Special education for preschoolers. Preschool children do not have to be identified under existing categories to receive services. So like I said earlier on, you're not looking at a diagnosis. You're looking to see, are they at risk in any of those types of issues. Okay, I'm running behind. Okay. Local education agencies may elect to use a variety of service delivery options. So there's different options that the school districts can do. And here I go through some of the parts of an IFSP that you need to remember. So these slides, the next few slides, are definitely something to review. Write down whatever you need to do to remember them. Statement of present levels of physical development, cognitive development, communication development, and adaptive development needs to be present in that IFSP. Statement of the family's resources. The priorities and concerns relative to enhancing the development of that infant or toddler with a disability is also needed. A statement of measurable results or outcomes expected to be achieved by that infant or toddler and the family. Remember that, and the family. Statement of specific early intervention services based on peer-reviewed research is also part of that. A statement of the natural environments in which the early intervention services will be appropriately provided, and the projected dates of the initiation of those services that multidisciplinary team is going to do, and the anticipated of that service needs to be included. Identification of the service coordinator, who is going to do those services, and steps to support the transition to preschool and other appropriate services is also part of that. So I've got a few more, the elements, a few more slides that are very similar to what we do. But here's also one that I'm going to unskip. How can we provide early intervention services for the child whose disability is not yet present? Because again, we do not have to look at, or should we look at, are they meeting any type of eligibility? It's just at risk. So look at that next slide to see whether you're right with that. Here we talk about the differences. Remember, you need to know the differences between an IFSP and an IEP. Number one, I hope you figured this out. Part of IFSP is the F for family. It revolves around the family as a constant and most important factor in that child's life. Define the family as a recipient of that early intervention services rather than the child alone. Focuses on the natural environment in which the child and family live, and also include interventions and services provided by a variety of health and human service agencies in addition to education. So it's not just the educators. They're going to be looking at other agencies that can assist that child or that family through this process. Screening, identification, and assessment. Assessment in early childhood special education is conducted for at least 5 different purposes. One is screening. Another one's determining eligibility for services. Are they at risk? Individualized planning, monitoring progress, and also measuring those child's outcomes are parts and reasons why you would do an assessment. Then the screening tools. You'll need to know a little bit more about the APGAR scale and what it's used for. Newborn blood test screening and developmental screening tests are also different screening tools that they provide. Determining eligibility for services. Comprehensive assessment measures performance in 5 different areas. You have motor development, you have cognitive development, you have communication and language, you have social emotional development, and adaptive development to assess those 5 major eligibility areas. Program planning and monitoring, guided by accurate and sensitive progress monitoring measures. So in other words, you're going to be watching and targeting and taking down information to have the data to know on a day-by-day basis whether that student and or family is making progress in what the team feels they need to make. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and open this up, let you see that. How are the 4 different purposes of assessment and evaluation in early childhood special education related to one another? Think about that and then go in and see whether you have that right. Now I have another video. I'd like for you to go ahead and watch the video. So go ahead and take a few minutes, pause this one, and go ahead and go watch the early intervention piece. All right, you should have watched the early intervention piece. Hopefully you gained a few more ideas from that video. The next part talks about curriculum and programming goals. We'll start to look later on at the element of play and things like that when we're working with students that are in this age group. 1, support families in achieving their own goals. You need to know what the family's goals are too. Remember, this is an IFSP. It needs to include what the family needs. Promote maximum child independence and mastery. Promote development in all important domains. Build and support social competence, along with facilitating the generalization of those learned skills. That's all part of that curriculum and programming goals. Some others are preparing assist children for typical life experiences with their families in school, but also out in the communities. They need, you need to look at all areas that family is involved with and make sure that they are getting involved and they're able to work with that, not just school. Help children and their families make smooth transitions, whether it's to the next school, whether it's to the next, experience outside in the different agency, or just experience in general in the community. Prevent or minimize the development of future problems or disabilities. So you're looking at that child, that family, and what could you do? What could that IFSP team do to help that family, again, close that gap and minimize future problems or disabilities? Developmentally appropriate practice. We're talking about 2 basic areas. Developmentally appropriate practice talks about a framework of principles and guidelines that outline practice and promotes young children's optimal learning and development. They're going to get to play. They're going to get to do things that will help them better, again, close that gap because they're doing it. Core principles involved. Knowledge must inform in decision making. Goals must be challenging yet achievable. Remember, we've talked about that in some of the IEP goals that you were supposed to do. So they need to be achievable. And teaching must be intentional to be effective. So the teacher needs to know why they are doing something. Make sure it's intentional, and then it's going to be more effective at that point. Selecting IFSP and IEP goals and objectives. Goals and objectives should be evaluated according to the following factors, and there are 4 factors. 3 of them are in red. You'll want to look at those a little bit closer. Functionality is 1. Generality. Then you've got instructional context and measurability. So you'll want to look over those 3 a little bit more as you're going through your book. How can a play activity or everyday routine become a specially designed learning opportunity for a preschooler with disabilities? Think about that. Stop the video for a little bit. Write down your thoughts on answering that question. How can play activity or everyday routine become that specially designed learning opportunity? Well, play provides children with natural, repeated opportunities for learning. Teachers of young children with disabilities can arrange the child's play environment to promote that skill mastery, across several different developmental domains. Teachers must also monitor the child's progress and make adjustments to the environment that will facilitate the success of those important skills. So that should have been a roundabout way. The answer. Here's one, another one that I think you'll like. This one here is on the importance of play. A lot of the students that I've had watch this in previous years really enjoyed watching this, so go ahead and give it a try. And pause this video and then go ahead and come back on. All right, I hope you had some fun. I hope you got some ideas of what that's all about and why that works. We're going to talk about, we got 3 more slides left for this one, and then we'll talk about standards and indicators. Instructional adaptations and modifications. 1, teaching play, the play expansions. Peer-mediated interventions. Then we have embedded learning opportunities, preschool activity schedules, and also a supportive physical environment are all part of that instructional adaptations and modifications. Service delivery options. And these are really what you can think about, because it's not just school related. Remember, we are talking about students, young children, toddlers that are before school between the ages of 3 and 5. So the service delivery is not your typical school type program. You have a hospital-based program for those who require specialized health care. So their services are going to be in the hospital, and you're going to have to go to the hospital to get those. They will have people going in and out and assisting that student, that toddler, those families at the hospital. You have home-based programs built around the family involvement and support. For those families that really can't get out, you're going to go to their place. If they need speech or language, if they need OT or PT or any of those options, they're going to go to the house, not to a school, not to the hospital. Center-based programs provide early intervention in a special ed setting outside the home. So this also doesn't necessarily have to be in a school environment. It may be a community building that they go to, that the teachers and OT, PT, SLPs, whatever they need to be, whatever they need, go to that central location and then work with the students there. There's also a combination home center program that includes center-based activities and home visitations. So a little bit of both on there. But you really need to understand these different delivery options. So make sure when you look at your textbook and you're doing some review, make sure and look at service delivery options of these here. Most important of all, and I've said this in a couple other chapters, family is the most important. Parents and families are most important in making early intervention work. You need to give them the tools. You need to make sure they're part of your team. They're not an outside person. They are an inside person that can help you help that child succeed and minimize that gap. Parents are the most frequent and constant observers of their children's behavior, not you. They're not in the school environment like they are when they get into elementary and on. They're seeing it. So you need to get with them, talk to them, and see what they're seeing at home to help you help them get over what they need help with. Parents know better than anyone else what their children need and can help educators set realistic goals. When you're making those goals, include the parents. It will work 100 times better if you include the parents and what they're talking about. Parents can monitor and report on their children's progress at home. Have some communication going back and forth that the parents can monitor that a lot faster, a lot easier than you can. And parents are in it for the long haul. They care about their kids. They want what's best for their kids. And if you get them on board and you get them in your IFSP and make sure that they know they are an integral part of developing and maintaining that IFSP, then you're going to have success in that IFSP. So anyway, pause it for a second while I go and get a couple things on here. I hope you all 6th video on Saturday morning to allow a little more time to get to see how you're doing on this week's progress so that I can get that done. Again, I will be leaving on Sunday morning. So I'll want to make sure and get this to you. Make sure you have something to do. Okay. So, young child with a developmental delay is what I want to look at, because that's typically what you're going to be looking at. So I'm going to include copy. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this is on there as the next slide. And it's YCDD, young child with a developmental delay. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, come on. I wanted to update this before I, okay. So young child with a developmental delay. When you look at the eligibility criteria for this criteria for ages 3 through 5, not kindergarten eligible for the current school year, who are experiencing developmental delays is measured in one of the three following ways. And there's indicators 21.20, 2100.30, and 2100.40. Note, LEAs in Missouri are not required to adopt and use the term young child with a developmental delay for any children in their jurisdiction. However, if an LEA uses the term young child with a developmental delay, the LEA must conform to both the state's definition and the term and the age range. And evaluation procedures include, this is 2100.10, A, the results of formal instruments assessments provided in standardized quantified form or equivalent levels. Or 2100.10b, the results of an informal assessment provided in an equivalent form. So there must be some sort of evaluation, some sort of assessments done that shows that they're a young child with a developmental delay. And a lot of times school districts will have screenings done where they will bring in speech and language pathologists, OT, PT, some of the process coordinators for the district that have some knowledge in these to help, and then they will screen all of these students that come in that are in that age group and figure out which ones show that they're at risk. Remember, again, you don't really have to do an eligibility, but yes, young child with a developmental delay can be done. 2100.20, identification based on multiple delays. So a comprehensive evaluation report is present with performance at or below 1.5 deviations or equivalent levels of the mean in a combination of any two or more following areas: cognitive, adaptive, social, emotional, communication, and physical. All of those should sound familiar in what we just went over. Then 2100.30, identification based on a single delay. A comprehensive evaluation is present which documents performance at or below 2.0 standard deviations or equivalent levels of the mean in any one of the following areas, and it lists cognitive and adaptive. So both of those two can be another way. It also has social emotional, communication, and physical that are also part of that. Then there's an OR. 2100.40, based on professional judgment. The multidisciplinary team concludes that even though the standard scores are equivalent level 8 criterion levels, a significant discrepancy exists in one or more of the developmental areas. All other applicable steps in eligibility must be addressed with sufficient documentation, formal and informal, oh my gosh, which led to the team to its decision. Or child is functioning above the stated criteria level but is eligible for services based on expected regression due to termination of previous intensive early intervention services. That's 2100.40b. There's also 21.40c. Documentation must include a statement of multidisciplinary team that child would regress without special education related services. And number 2, data demonstrating functioning above criterion level. And 3, information regarding early intervention services such as type, frequency, intensity, duration of services, and where services will be delivered. That should also remind you of some things we just talked about. And then there's an and, not an or, but an and, adverse educational impact. And the evaluation report includes information that addresses a child's need for special education and related services as a result of that disability. So quite a lot of information that the school district has to look through if they want to give an eligibility criteria as a young child with developmental delay. But remember, as it notes, the school district does not have to denote that they are a young child with developmental delay. All they have to do is show that they have an at-risk for having a disability, and they can service those students. So again, there's a lot of students that can fall under this eligibility. So anyway, this concludes the video on Chapter 14. What I would remind you of the items that are due this Sunday night. There is only one discussion board on this one. You'll have 2 quizzes. You'll have the strategies for EBD and ECSE. And then you'll also have the test at the end. So I hope that you have printed out the study guide for this, like I suggested in my email and discussion about class last Tuesday. But anyway, good luck, and we'll go from there. And let's see here. Actually, Chapter 6 and 14, because I'm doing this ahead of time a little bit, you do not have, cancel that last comment. You will just have that. You will have next week, you will have 6, 7, 8, and 14's test. So do not freak out. I know I just said you'd have a test, but you don't. So you have one more week before that test. But definitely get that study guide out this week and get going so that you can be ready for that next test. See you on Thursday night. Talk to you later.